I don't have a gavel. Let's go. It's Wednesday, February 5th. The Inter-Neighborhood Council Organization's general meeting. Adam, can we have the roll call?
Bartolo Square North, Alice Madrid. Blackstock North, Nancy Rand. Here. Bryce Canyon North, John Hike. Here. Cabrillo Del Dean. Cal Gisler, Elizabeth Garcia. Carriage Square, Len Schulman. Here. Channel Islands, Audrey Keller. Present. College Estates, John Beck. College Park, Martin Jones. Diamond Bar, Dennis Ralph. East Village, Paul Henke. Here. El Rio West, Daniel Ryberg. Here. 5 Points Northeast, Pat Brown. Here. Fremont North, Dave Ebbett. Here. Fremont South, Gabriel Turan.
Here.
Hobson Park East, Jack Villa.
Here.
Hollywood by the Sea, Michelle Carrillo. Kamala Park, Bill Winter. Lemonwood Eastmont, Joe Avalar. Marina West, Pat Haydett. Orchard Park, Diana Velzi. Here. Oxnard Shores, Julie Pena. Here. Pleasant Valley Estates, Rosanna Biggerstaff. Redwood, Carlos Quiros. Present. Rio Lindo, Tim Gingras. River Park, Vice Chair Ty Hartley. Here. Rose Park, Vice Chair Alfonso Arroyo. Here. Sea Air, Edward Castillo. Seaview Estates, Scott Taylor. Sierra Linda, Sergio Garcia. South Bank, Jackie Tedeschi. South Winds, Carolina Gallardo Magana. Here. Via Marina, Catherine King. West Village, Michael Gleason. I know he's here. He's in the back. Wilson, Vice Chair Steve Fleischer. And Windsor North, Aaron Greer. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we'll have a pledge allegiance, but after the pledge allegiance, we'll have a moment of silence for Officer Nathan Martin, who passed away a few weeks ago, and our former mayor, Manuel Lopez. Please stand for the pledge allegiance. Repeat after me. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to approval of the minutes for our January 8th meeting, our regular meeting. Do we have a motion to pass the minutes for our last meeting? I know.
I second the motion.
We have a motion. We have a first?
Yeah, who moved it?
I heard a second, but I didn't hear a first.
I'd move to approve the minutes.
We had a second? Did we have a second?
Second the motion.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Now we're moving to public comments. This will be 15 minutes at At this time, a person may address the INCO on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the INCO. The INCO cannot enter into a detailed discussion or take any action on any item presented during this public comments at this time. Such items may only be referred to the Executive Secretary for administration action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda for discussion. Public comments on items on the agenda will be considered at the time of consideration of the agenda item. Do we have anybody for public comments? Items not on the agenda. Oh, good, that's good. We got plenty of time. Huh? Okay, now we'll move into new business, and the first subject will be our Ventura County Supervisors candidates for District 1, 3, and 5. I'll move now to Gabe. Can you give a description of how we're going to apply the forum? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jack. Tonight we have our supervisor candidates from Districts 1, 3, and 5. At our last INCO meeting, we formally voted to have tonight be a forum for the candidates as well as Measure B, which is our second agenda item. For the candidates, after our planning meeting, I reached out to all of the candidates running for supervisor for each of the districts that overlap with the city of Oxnard. And we have with us today from District 1, Mr. Trevor Quirk. And I know I'm not the moderator. I'll say let's wait till we're all done, and then we'll give everybody a big round of applause. So, okay. Thank you, though. Thank you, Mr. Quirk. And from District 3, Kim Mara Stevenson. Thank you, Tim. From District 5, we have Jess Herrera. Thank you. From District 5, Carmen Ramirez. From District 5, Jeffrey Burham. I said I'm not the moderator. I'm not going to pull you on that. So, and then from District 5, Mr. Tim Flynn. So now we can do a big round of applause for everybody. And just some quick notes in my outreach. I did hear back from each of the candidates except one. And just to let you all know, for transparency, Mr. Matt Levere, who's running for the District 1 seat as well, said he would be out of town and could not make it tonight. Mr. Jeff Kettleson, we did not get a response from him after several attempts. Supervisor Kelly Long's office did reach back to me and say that they had a conflict, or she had a conflict and could not be here tonight. And originally, Veronica Robles Solis did confirm she would be here. However, she knew there'd be a Oxnard School Board meeting tonight, and she had to be there after all due to the publishing of the agenda and what was going to be on the agenda. So those are the pieces of feedback I received from those who are not here tonight. And just so we can run down how this will work, we have opening statements that each of our candidates here tonight will give. They will have 2 minutes for an opening statement each. Then we will have 3 rounds of discussion on topics that were identified by the INCO chairs as being priority topics, issues that overlap with the County of Ventura and the City of Oxnard. Those 3 rounds, the first round will be on homelessness, which by far was the most voted for item. The second item will be socioeconomic equity issues. The third item will be protecting our environmental resources. After that time, after the third round for those items, and each of those rounds will be 1.5 minutes each from each of the candidates on each topic, we'll have time for Q&A, and you may see that we have these comment or question cards up here in the front. There's some here next to Mr. Smith, and then we have some over here next to Mr. Rydberg. And if during the presentation a comment jumps in your head or a question, please write it down and submit it to Adam. And then what we're doing is we're looking for themes or questions that are repeated again and again, and I'm going over them here so that we can be efficient with our time and try and get the questions that keep coming up asked of our candidates when that time comes. Then to close it out for the first portion of tonight, we will have a closing statement, and each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. And that's all I have. Thank you, Jack.
Let's see. Okay, opening statement will be for 2 minutes, And we will start with Trevor Quirk and work our way to our right. Go ahead. Trevor, you have 2 minutes.
Sure. Quick question. Are we to remain seated or shall we stand, or what's the...
Whatever you'd
Format.
like.
I'd like to stand. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Trevor Quirk. I'm running as a write-in candidate for Ventura County Supervisor District 1. The reason I'm running as a write-in candidate is because I think the people elect politicians to deliver solutions and not lawsuits. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a husband and father. I'm a lawyer. I'm a community activist. And I'm a nonprofit founder. In that order. Let me talk to you about being a husband and a father. I met my college sweetheart. I met my sweetheart in college. We studied environmental policy at UC Davis. We graduated in 1999 together. We both went to law school, although she was smarter than me and she got into a better school. We both went to law school and we graduated in 2003. She moved back to her hometown in San Luis, and I got a job in Las Vegas. And so if some of you have my cell phone number and you're wondering why you're getting a 702 number, that's why. In 2006, we rekindled our love and we moved to a little apartment not too far from here. My grandparents have lived in the Camarillo area for about 70 years. We were looking around, and one of the things that attracted to me to her was when we were in an environmental policy class.
Your
one of the
time is up,
professors-
Mr. Quirk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick thing. Thank you, Mr. Quirk.
I didn't know there was. I was told there was 10 minutes.
2 minutes.
No, 2 minutes. Oh. 2 minutes.
I said 2 earlier,
This will be
right?
2
I
minutes
didn't misspeak?
opening
Okay.
statement.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I just want to make a quick logistical note. Please speak into the microphone so that this video is being recorded and broadcast. And you have a great booming voice, so I'm sure it picked it up. But just for everyone to know, when you give your answers or responses, please speak into the microphones.
Okay, great.
Next will be Tim Morrow Stevenson.
Hi, yes, I'm Kim Mara Stevenson, candidate for District 3. Those are the smaller, most rural and vulnerable communities in our district, ranging from Wainimi all the way up to Piru and Lockwood Valley. I want to be clear, I'm not running against anyone here at this table, and I'm looking forward to working with all of them in the future, as well as all of our neighborhood councils. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a long line of hard workers that represent this community. My grandmother was a campesina, a farm worker. She married my grandfather, who was an immigrant from Hong Kong. He got his citizenship through military service. Every generation of my family has served at war for this country. Both grandfathers, my stepfather, and my brother in Afghanistan. My own father, my birth father, became mentally ill in his late 20s. He committed suicide at age 30. My mother was single, widowed, with 4 children under the age of 8. I was the 8-year-old, and times were tough. Got my first Social Security job at age 14, and I haven't stopped working since. Started that job selling shoes alongside my mom in Camarillo, all the while knowing that education was the pathway to a better future. So we did very well in school. I went to Rio Mesa High School, graduated, went from there to UCLA, and then earned a full fellowship to Stanford University, where I earned my PhD in educational psychology. That set me up for a career in public education. I've been a public school educator for over 25 years, teaching at every level from kindergarten through college. I came back to serve this community, and after talking to kids, as well as mentoring other women for decades about stepping up, getting involved in the community, and having a voice, when I saw the voting record of my opponent, our current supervisor, I realized that it was my time to step up and have a voice and serve this community in a new way. I've been running a grassroots, volunteer-driven campaign for a year. I will continue to work hard for you, and I know I'm doing a good job because the oil industry has recently put $825,000
Your
into
time
a
is up,
campaign
Mrs.
to defeat me. Thank you. I look forward to talking issues.
Jess Herrera.
Good evening. Excuse me. Is this working? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good evening. As you heard, my name is Jess Herrera. I'm a lifelong resident of Oxnard. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, Vietnam era. I went to college on the GI Bill, and I started working on the waterfront where my father had started working in 1941 during the outbreak of World War II. I eventually became a union official with jurisdiction over the ports of San Diego, LA, Long Beach, and the port of Hueneme. And my efforts on behalf of being a leader of the workforce led me to be receiving the Labor Leader 2000 award. Also, as chairman of the U.S. Action Network, I led a county-wide effort to register over 2,000 applicants who were eligible for U.S. citizenship who otherwise could not have afforded the fees. In 1994, I was elected a harbor commissioner and have since served 7 terms as president of the Oxnard Harbor District. In that time, I have been a leader in the port's growth into Ventura County's largest economic engine, and also the largest job creator with 15,000 direct and indirect jobs. Also record revenues year after year, providing millions of tax dollars to our local communities, and all at no cost to taxpayers. My efforts in this regard was awarded by the Ventura County Star and their presentation of the 25 over 50 award for impact for making Ventura County a better, well, it's actually for impact, talent, and vision for making Ventura County a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Carmen Ramirez?
Thank you very much, and I want to appreciate everybody who's come out here, and also my fellow candidates. Running for office is not for the faint-hearted, and obviously we have people with some courage here. But I want to tell you that I have been running this campaign for county supervisor since March last year. I did not decide at the last minute to do it. I've been thinking about it a long time. What I want to do is bring some of my efforts to modernize our city and protect it from abuse to the county level. I started my career here in Oxnard as a legal aid attorney in the colonia. Por eso hablo español. Puedo comunicar con mucha gente que vive en nuestra ciudad, en la área del Distrito Quinto. I can represent and communicate with so many of the people who live in District 5 who do not speak Spanish or do not speak English. Since I've been on council, we've had a very hard time getting through all of the errors of the past, and we're there. Our credit rating has improved. We've had to do difficult things. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I do think we have to protect our environment and our people. I have major endorsements from the Sierra Club, the Women's Political Council, Latinas Lead, Central Coast League of Conservation Voters, and almost every elected state official in our area. I believe our county is organic when you neglect one part of it, like the poorer parts, such as what Kim will represent, and of course our Oxnard areas. You're going to find the resources are going elsewhere and causes a bigger problem. So I want to bring some of my efforts to modernize and protect our community from environmental abuse. I also have been subject to a push-pull, and some of you have gotten that with lies and slanders about my record. Please be an informed voter.
Thank you. Jeff Burham?
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Burham, or Jeffrey Burham in Espanol, si quieren. I'm here to be your public servant, and I'm the only one for District 5 with a proper education, experience, and credentials meeting the job description for supervisor, which is financial management and leadership. For 40 years in public service, I was a highly decorated career Air Force officer, Air Force Academy graduate, combat veteran of the Cold War and Desert Storm. I was a public fiduciary as a licensed certified public accountant, investment advisor, and federal budget officer, responsible for hundreds of thousands of lives, including individuals, government employees, and businesses through 3 recessions. I am an active community volunteer, and I have 2 master's degrees in political science and business administration. I want to be your economic and environmental champion. I want to thank INCO for tonight and the Latin Business Association for their statewide endorsement and honoring me with their Hero of the Year award. Today, we stand against career politicians asking for a promotion despite inaction, recalls, expensive lawsuits, and ballot initiatives, all at our expense. In fact, the county judge just referred to their decadent practices as Kafkaesque, which means oppressive and nightmarish. Now they want to jump ship and abandon us. With years of financial mismanagement and deficit, crumbling infrastructure, and a lack of jobs while the rest of the country is thriving. If they can't get it done at the city, then they certainly can't get it done at the county. I will.
Thank you. Tim Flynn.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the INCO, the Inter-Neighborhood Council Organization, for sponsoring this debate. And I started my public service several years ago by first and foremost being a volunteer in my neighborhood organization, the Wilson Neighborhood. So I value very much this organization and what they do on behalf of the residents. I'm a candidate for county supervisor for one primary reason, and that is economic development and job growth. The United States of America is experiencing today the largest and longest expansion, economic expansion in the history of the nation. Yet for too many people here in Ventura County, the middle-class dream has eluded them. We have in Oxnard in particular, perhaps up to 40% of the population that can't even afford not only to buy a home, but 2 or 3 families have to live in one home. Something needs to be done about that, and something needs to be done especially on a county level. What can a county supervisor do? Most people, they know what a mayor does or a city council person does, but they don't understand county government, or they don't understand what the function is. First and foremost, the County Board of Supervisors are county-wide leaders, not just city leaders. Even though county supervisors represent a district, they're representing ideas and they're trying to get things done on a county level. We have a county housing crisis. We have a crisis in terms of job growth. We have a crisis in terms of trying to keep people in Ventura County that can afford to stay here. We have people at the very bottom of the scale, 2 and 3 and 4 families here in Oxnard, living in one home because they can't afford to live here. And at the upper end, we have college graduates that are living with their parents because they can't afford to buy a home. It should be the primary responsibility of the Board of Supervisors to elevate economic development and job growth on the same level as mental health and public safety.
Thank you, candidates. Now we'll go into, before we go into round 1, I'd like to mention that we're being interpreted in Spanish in the back as well, and that the candidates up here were seated at random. It was a blind draw of where they were going to sit, and so just a little bit of information there. Okay, round 1, it'll be a minute and a half for each candidate to speak on homelessness. And so I'm going to start with Kim Stevenson.
Great, thank you. I've been on the ground, as I said, for a year, talking to people, attending homeless forums, renters' rights forums, you name it. I've been out there on the ground with people, and over, the number one issue in this community and throughout this county for people is homelessness. You know, what are the causes of homelessness? We're looking at all kinds of things. Economic, we're looking at affordability of our county, as Tim was talking about. We're looking at eviction issues. We're looking at lack of services. We're looking at job loss, mental health issues, healthcare crises. We know that we're all vulnerable. And one thing that I love when I come to Oxnard is that when people talk about our homeless community, they come from a place of empathy and a place of compassion. And so they don't look at them and say, let's get rid of them. It's more about how can we take care of them. So I really, really appreciate that about the approach from Oxnard. You know, what do we need to do about homelessness? First thing we need to do is we need to find people shelter. Every educator, every psychologist knows that the first level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is shelter and physical safety. We've got to get people into shelter, possibly looking into things like housing first. Then we need to start coordinating our services at the county level, making this a priority, because it is a priority. Everyone I talk to says it. We need to make this a priority in our county to bring together our law enforcement, our legal services, our health, our addiction, mental services, and
Thank
then we
you,
need to
Mrs.
work to
Stevenson.
prevent homelessness.
Next.
Thank you.
Jess Herrera?
Okay, precisely because there has been no economic development in the city of Oxnard, we have this crisis. This problem has been brewing for years, for decades, and nothing has been done about it, and we keep talking about economic development, and where is it? It's not here. We must stop ignoring the causes and start addressing the solutions for homelessness. We know homeless people have mental and health issues that must be addressed. We know that policing and incarceration don't work, so we need to implement programs that do work. For years, the Department of Housing and Urban Development has recognized housing as the housing first approach as the most successful. This will take a unified and committed task force of federal, state, and local leaders to coordinate efforts and resources. We have to come together. There are over 100 churches and community-based organizations in our community. Working together, they could all make a significant difference, but we need leadership to bring people together. The State of California's Housing and Community Development Department has provided over $3 billion in funding for construction and acquisition of affordable housing through the years. We also need to break the cycle and identify those people that are in risk of becoming homeless. California also has programs for that. They have the California Emergency Solutions and Grant Programs that provide assistance to those in danger of becoming homeless. The resources are available. What has been lacking here forever is the leadership and the urgency to get things done.
Thank you. Carmen Ramirez?
Thank you. I do believe in housing first, but first you have to have some units to put people in. We should all be aware that what we have on our streets is about 600 homeless folks. Some of them have mental health issues. Many have basic health issues and mental health and drug issues. We do not have enough units, but who controls the money for homeless services? It is the county. I have been participating in the Continuum of Care, which doles out money to different projects and to cities, including our city, to deal with the shelter, keeping it going. It's very costly, but the governor's plan, which is nice, gives all of the money to the bigger cities. Our county will not get any of that money. I'll be going to Sacramento with Southern California Association of Governments in 2 weeks to advocate that the governor take a look at cities like our city and our county to make sure that some of that money comes here, because it is a huge problem. Many of the people on the street are seniors. They're going to be more seniors because we're going to be experiencing a silver tsunami. It's not affecting everybody now, but if we don't take care of it, it will. I think Oxnard has been doing a good job listening to the community about where shelter should be and changing plans when necessary.
Thank you. Jeff Burrow?
Well, I was proud to take part in the Plaza Park Homeless Resource Fair. So many wonderful people. And I got to tell you, I was completely astonished when our Mayor Pro Tem recently stated our faith community only prays for a miracle. Calvary Chapel, our businesses and not-for-profits do a lot. We need government partnerships, not unaffordable, ineffective government programs. Partnerships provide affordable and effective holistic programs with measurable results. Specifically, we can provide 1, access to mental health services, food, and health care. Job transitions. 3, short-term shelter and housing facilities. 4, clear law enforcement, funding, and financial accountability. To illustrate, the temporary shelter used $600,000 for 100 beds. That's $60,000 per bed. And it's probably more like 3 times that. Hope Boys and Girls has done it for $10,000 a person per year. Yes, a faith-based group. At the state level, $2.7 billion was spent over the past 2 years, yet homelessness has surged 16% because there was no strategic plan. From the county, Oxnard needs its fair share of state and federal funding. As a financial expert, I will promote total quality management to streamline processes, save money, and maximize
you.
all
Your time's up.
community resources.
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about what's being done right here in the city of Oxnard. Currently, there are, as was stated, there's about 700 homeless people in Oxnard, and of those 700, 100 are being housed in a shelter. The remaining 600 have no shelter. If we were to house or attempt to house each and every one of these individuals in a shelter, it would cost the city of Oxnard close to $20 million. The city of Oxnard does not have $20 million to house 700 people. And the bottom line is this: we have 40% of all the nation's homeless in the state of California. There are 250,000 homeless people in America, of which 100,000, if not more, are here in the state of California. I think it's high time, not only do we act locally and implement many of the ideas that my colleagues here have discussed, including permanent housing, but it's high time that the governor of the state of California, that's facing one of the worst crises in the history of the state, something on the level of the Dust Bowl refugees coming to California, goes to Washington, meets with this president, puts an end to this ridiculous partisan bickering on a national level, acts statewide. And I believe what we should do is take a place like Camp Roberts in the middle of the 101, vastly underutilized. We need to find a place to house people until we can get them back to work. And I think we need a new WPA program to get people back to work that are homeless.
Thank you. Trevor Quirk?
Quirk. So, look, it's no mystery that we've got a homeless problem. You look at the VC Star, and the homeless population in 2018 said it skyrocketed by 28%. In 2017, it rose by 13%. What do you think of when you think of the river bottom? What do you think of when you think of the Aloha Steakhouse? You guys remember that? That homeless guy walking in and killing a man as he was eating with his family? We can't stand for that. I've heard a lot of solutions up here. We should create some place and chip them off. We should build more houses. We should, housing first. I agree with that concept. You know, I saw my opponent taking a photo op in front of a homeless shelter, a 24-hour homeless shelter he just opened. I said congratulations, because I think good work deserves credit. It's true. But the issue is, if we could build 100 homeless houses, homeless shelters, and put the folks in them, but you haven't fixed the mental health issue, they're going to leave. That's the bottom line. So the number one way that you address this is we create a county coalition of folks that are going to deal with this problem, starting with mental health. That's the number one issue, in my opinion.
Thank you. Now we'll go to round two. Before we start, just a reminder that February 3rd was the day you could start mailing in your ballot, and February 18th is the last day to register for the March 3rd election. Okay, round two will be on socioeconomic equity issues, and we'll start this time with Jess Herrera.
Okay, social economic equity issues. Well, as you can all see, here in Oxnard, with 29,000 people living in poverty, there is no social or economic equity, and we need to do something about that. We need to provide equity in all areas, in education, in health care, in resources, and also in the environment. All stakeholders need to be involved in everything that goes on in this community. That provides equity for people to be heard and to be listened to and to take part in the problems and the solutions. Too often, all these issues have been disregarded. There are people that are disregarded because of their social economic status, because of their education, and maybe because of their race. And this should not be happening here in Oxnard or anywhere in the United States of America. So I am a strong advocate for social equity. As a labor leader for years, I worked making sure that working families had all these issues, were taken care of, and had the equity, had the ability to have contracts with labor-sustaining wages and health care and everything else that goes along with having a good job to support your family. There's too many people in Oxnard that do not have the resources for a comfortable lifestyle, and that has to change. To have equity, we must bring everybody up. If one of us succeeds, we must all succeed together. I think I have the leadership to provide that type of economy.
Carmen Ramirez?
I spent my career as a legal aid attorney helping people who were disadvantaged because of their circumstances. I, on the other hand, grew up in California when schools were well-funded, and I had great opportunities, and thanks to the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King and others, Cesar Chavez here in our state, I was able to go to law school when my parents didn't have any money to help me. And I've had a very wonderful, successful career, and I've devoted it to helping people get equal justice. It's still a big important thing. If you can't get a good education, and we have a public school system in our state, but it is not well funded, and that is why I support schools and communities first, which is the split role. Please do not buy the lies and propaganda that it's going to raise residential taxes. It will not. It is going to make those corporations who never pay their fair share contribute to our community, including schools, roads, the things our cities need. Our cities need more support than sales tax and property tax. We're a poor city. We don't have enough resources. Check out what Disney Corporation just did to a PTA that showed Lion King. Meanwhile, they got their parking for free from the city of Anaheim for $1 a year. That will change.
Thank you. Jeff Burham?
Well, we can start with the Ventura County Health Assessment, which uses a socio-needs index to measure factors that do influence healthy families. That includes employment, housing, neighborhood characteristics, affordable healthy foods, and educational attainment. Unfortunately, Oxnard ranks among the lowest in these measurements, and we must think to the future with jobs, education, and community involvement. Jobs lift up our families. Jobs make housing affordable. Jobs keep the next generation here. We can do this by opening Oxnard up for business with investment, training, opportunity, and free enterprise zones. Turning away 1,500 families, sustaining Amazon jobs for Oxnard was a mistake. Raising the Oxnard sales tax another 1.5% to the highest in the county would be a mistake. Red tape and overregulation stop jobs, infrastructure development, and housing. Education from First 5 through Oxnard School District are the platform for our kids to succeed. We have 80% failure rates. We need more options. Community involvement starts with INCO. Success is based upon attitudes. Involve members who value clean neighborhoods, education, healthy lifestyles, and self-sufficiency, promote a community that can thrive.
Tim Flynn?
Thank you very much. You know, at the very core of this issue is workforce development. It's job training. Is it realistic to expect that if a laborer here in the city of Oxnard has an education maybe to the 3rd or maybe 4th grade and is working currently in agriculture making minimum wage, is it realistic to expect right now that at the age of 35 or 40 they're going to start all over again and get a college degree? I wouldn't give up on anyone like that. I wouldn't say to somebody, don't try to get that. But I think what's more realistic is they need job training for futuristic jobs. In the next 25 to 30 years, half of all the jobs that exist today will no longer exist. And there's job training that the county Board of Supervisors and the county, with its new economic development program, for the first time they came up with one in 2017, should lead the way at workforce development. I'm working right now with the city manager of the city of Oxnard, who through his initiative with Oxnard College and together with my work, we're working on exactly that, providing that job training right at Oxnard College, identifying what classes are needed at Oxnard College so that it can actually provide the workforce development and the training needed so that we can get higher paying jobs, more skilled and more trained labor, and get people higher salaries.
Thank you. Trevor Quirk?
So, look, we're talking about socio-economic equity issues, right? What does that mean to you? You probably have to Google it. I'm going to tell you. It means that it really depends on the soil that you're lucky enough to be planted in. Remember that. It depends on 3 factors. Number 1, your education. Number 2, your income. And number 3, your occupation. Those 3 factors drive what we're talking about here. Let me give you some quick stats. Do you know that there's 68% of the folks in Oxnard have a high school degree? National average is 87%. Bachelor's degree or higher is 17%. U.S. is 31. 1.26 times, males make 1.26 times more than females here. The average income is 62 grand. In Oxnard, the national average is 61, but the average house of a price, the average price of a house, $520,000 here in Oxnard. You know what the national average is? 200 grand. There's a problem there, folks. How do you address it? How do you fix it? Number 1, you take care of our natural resources. There's 3 power plants and a Superfund site right here in Oxnard. Take care of your natural resources, and the people and the jobs are going to follow, and my time's up.
Thank you. Kim Mutter-Stevenson?
Hi. So all you have to do to look at socioeconomic inequalities is look at a map of our district, and especially my district. And you'll see that my district lights up bright red if you map out where the oil wells are, if you map out where there's lack of access to health care and to educational services. If you look at where kids have higher asthma rates than other areas, where you look at their health care crises, poor air quality, all those areas light up, whether it's Santa Paula, Fillmore, Piru, South Oxnard, where these industrial power plants are, the pesticides are being used. If you look at that, if you look at a map, you'll see there are certain areas that light up bright red and certain areas that don't. And that's what we need in a supervisor, is someone who actually understands that, sees it, and prioritizes it. And make sure that all people have access to education for upward mobility, healthcare services, a healthy environment, and have safe industrial practices going on around their homes. All people. If it's not good enough for my backyard, it should not be good enough for your backyard either. That's what socioeconomic inequities are. I've stood up for Oxnard College to make sure that they got green energy technologies the same way that they were going to put in at Ventura College and Moore Park College. They were not planning to do that until some of us stood up at a board meeting to do that. I have kids speaking to the Lions Club right now about homelessness, some of my students. They're working throughout the county just like I am to make sure these inequities are addressed.
Thank you. Now we'll move to round 3. And before we get to that, I want to announce that the Channel Islands Harbor businesses and district or neighborhood will be having a Supervisor 5, District 5 forum, and that'll be at 6:30 on February 10th at the Channel Islands Yacht Club. Okay, round 3 will be protecting our environmental resources. And this time we'll start with Carmen Ramirez.
Thank you. This is one of the reasons that I ran for city council initially. I was very involved in the effort to stop a liquefied natural gas terminal off our shore that was going to be dangerous and polluting. I helped lead thousands of people opposed to it, and we fought it and beat that effort to stop that from being placed once again in a vulnerable community of Oxnard. Since then, on council, I've led the fight for keeping another polluting, unnecessary power plant off our coast. And finally, also led the effort to for our city to join the Clean Power Alliance, which does invest in renewable energy, along with good jobs, project labor agreements, union wages, in developments in the service area. We now have 1 million customers. We're accountable to the people, and we do not have excessive executive salaries. Environmental abuse of Oxnard is always attempted, and with the support of the City Council, I have led the way to stop those abuses, including restoring our Ormond Beach wetlands and stopping, we hope, pesticide use in our parks. So much more to say. The clock wasn't running. I don't want to be unfair. I could go on and on because it's a very important topic. I'm very concerned about climate change and what it's doing to the county and the future of our young people. I'll leave it there, just to be fair.
Thank you, Carmen. Sorry, candidates, our clock
I don't think I
didn't
went
start
over.
there. Okay, now Jeff Burham.
Well, we support our County Resource Conservation District's 5-year strategic plan and the County Civic Alliance, which highlight our water, our fire preparedness, soil, invasive species, land management, wildlife, and energy concerns. We also support the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business position for groundwater sustainability of the Oxnard Subbasin, which includes reclaimed water sources, water recharge facility upgrades, and reduces seawater intrusions. In addition, I would emphasize the need for balance with economic vitality and job creation that we have lacked due to contradictory regulations from SOAR. Here in Oxnard, I can't stress the need enough to clean up the Edison Canal and the harbor from pollution that exceeds our standards. Both are full of algae and bacteria due to pesticides and premature circulation system shutdown. Ormond Beach, downtown, and Halico have been environmental catastrophes. Finally, the city of Oxnard struck a deal for the dismantling and remediation of the Ormond Beach plant. It sounds good. However, this does not include environmental restoration nor accountability for the $25 million deposit arrangement from GenOn to VCCF.
Thank you. Tim Flynn.
So let's talk right now about what's happening in the city of Oxnard under the current leadership and the leadership of our city manager, Alexander Nguyen. There are 2 power plants, as many of you know, actually 3 in the city of Oxnard. One of those power plants is out here at Mandalay Bay off of 5th Street. Currently, that plant is shut down, and right now there's a plan, many interested people in that site, and the plan would be to remediate all of that and get that plant knocked down and replace it with something that is environmentally sustainable and hopefully also promotes economic growth. We have another power plant at Ormond Beach, and that power plant was slated to close just like here at 5th Street. However, we're looking to extend the term of allowing them to produce energy for the next 3 years and have them invest in a fund that will eventually remove that power plant. So that's just on the 2 power plants. But we have a whole host of environmental concerns here in the city of Oxnard. Let me just tell you what I'm primarily concerned about. My brother-in-law was a petroleum engineer for 25 years, and what he tells me, and it's known in the industry, the writing is on the wall. The oil industry and energy knows that climate change is taking place, and they're preparing for it, and for that reason, they're also investing in alternative energy. But we have to have a transition plan to get away from these fossil fuels to sustainable fuels in this country.
Trevor Quirk.
So I like what Ms. Ramirez had to say, but I'm going to take this opportunity to focus on a local problem that we're currently experiencing where I live and in the city of Ventura. Let me tell you something that's going on, you guys. You drive over the Ventura River as you're going to Santa Barbara. Everyone does that. Did you know that in 1998, the state of California wrote something to the city in writing, told them the river was a problem, the fish are endangered, they needed to fix it? Did you know that the city chose to do nothing? In 2007, the feds wrote the same thing to the city and said, hey, the river's a problem, fix it. You know what the city did? Nothing. Do you know in 2013, the city hired its own engineer named Hopkins to issue a report? You know what Hopkins' report said? Fish are dying. They're an endangered species. You got to fix it. You know what the city did? Nothing. 2014, the channel keeper steps in and sues the city. They gave him an opportunity. They went to these meetings just like you guys are doing, and the city buried its head in the sand. 2016, my opponent, who's not even here, took over as mayor. You know what he did? He sued all of us. He sued 10,500 people. And he said, it's not the city's problem that the fish are dying. It's all you folks. Some of them are sitting right here in this galley. That's not the way you deal with problems. You guys elect politicians to give it to you straight, to sit down and deliver solutions. And you do that by bringing people together, not by tearing them apart.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson?
Hi. So we need a supervisor who will protect our soil, our land, air, and water. Also our quality of life in this community and our agricultural resources. My opponent did not support SOAR. We need to protect our agricultural resources so we have fresh food in this country, and we need to make sure that they're protected with proper, sustainable agricultural practices. We need to move away, we've just banned chlorophorose. We need to continue looking at are we being safe in our agricultural areas. Once we poison it or pave it, it's very hard to get it back. We need to protect it as long as we can, and there's plenty of infrastructure and other work that can be done in the meantime. We also need to do infrastructure work to prevent future fires. When we have fires due to our climate crisis, we are closing our schools. We are impacting our communities. We've got to get that work done. We are over-dependent on oil in this community. The research is out there. We need to transition to new renewable sustainable energies. And this overdependence is going to hurt us economically. Would you invest 30% of your budget or your budget into Blockbuster? We should not be getting 30% of our revenues from oil in this county. We need to start diversifying economically. We need to start investing better, and we need to move to other industries that will sustain us into the future. And that does require transitioning our workers into those new areas. And then we need to continue to do policies that will change our behavior so that we don't impact the environment the way we have.
Thank you. Now we fielded some questions in the audience, and oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, Mr. Herrera.
I talk about equality and equity, huh? Start the clock all over again. You know, there's no question that everybody's in favor of a clean and green economy and to live in a clean city. You know, there's a lot of things that can be done and a lot of things that cities are doing and that we could copy, but of course going green takes money. It always has taken money and it always will. At the Port of Hueneme, we had a particular problem. The state of California put a mandate on us that we should go to all green energy for our vessels. That was a $14 million process. The Port of Hueneme didn't have $14 million. We had to find $14 million to make this come true, or else go out of business and lose thousands of dollars for our community. We were able to get a Tiger grant so that we could finance that project of plugging in the vessels for shoreside power. Now, if we had not done that, we would be in a big trouble. And the point here is that these types of grants are available, but you have to go out there and find them. If you really want to make a difference, you have to find them. And as far as jobs of the futures go and technical jobs, yes, we need those. My wife, Dr. Cynthia Herrera, works for the Community College District, and she's working on those types of issues. But we also need the jobs and the blue-collar jobs that we have today to support our families. People with these blue-collar jobs are sending their kids to Harvard, and that's what we need.
Thank you. Now we'll go into the question and answer we took from the audience. And because of time reasons, we're going to combine two questions, and we'll give the candidates 1.5 minutes to answer both questions. And those questions are, what is the first goal you have if elected as supervisor, and why do you feel you are the best candidate for the job? And we'll start with Mr. Broom.
Okay, well, I think I've made it pretty clear in my platform of what my goals are, and I'll just tell you what my platform goals are. Together, we will restore economic prosperity, public safety and infrastructure, and financial transparency of our community, particularly the last one. Now, jobs are my priority. We have not had economic growth for 5 years. I am very, very concerned about us moving towards stagflation. That is inflation and unemployment. We cannot do this. All right? So I intend to rebuild the harbor like it was in the 80s. I would like to see what we can do to maximize use of our opportunity zones that we have. I would like to apply for free enterprise zones under the new Cal Matters Act. And I think that we could give enough tax credits and business credits to incentivize companies to come here and get us the jobs that we need. So we could do the corridor along the 101, open up Oxnard for business, and I'd love to help Oxnard rebuild downtown. We need that, and South Downtown. Let's make Oxnard a destiny location. It was before, we can do it again. Why am I the best? Well, I told you from the very beginning. It's been a long road of being a public servant for 40 years.
Thank you. Tim Flynn.
Thank you very much. With jobs and economic development being my number one goal as a county supervisor, my top priority will be the redevelopment of Channel Islands Harbor, and in particular, Fisherman's Wharf. But to be successful at doing that, we just saw recently a process that took place that was not successful. To be able to succeed to do that, you have to get buy-in from the public. The public has to be part of a process of redeveloping Channel Islands Harbor. And specifically about Fisherman's Wharf. Fisherman's Wharf at one point was a top destination for the whole state of California. And Channel Islands Harbor is, I believe, one of the most beautiful harbors anywhere, not just in California, but the United States. But Fisherman's Wharf is nothing. It is a skeleton of its former self. And when I first ran for the Oxnard City Council, it was because there was a building right in my own neighborhood that looked very similar to the way Fisherman's Wharf looks, and that was Old St. John's Hospital. And today, of course, it's a thriving senior center. So my top priority will be the redevelopment of Fisherman's Wharf, but that cannot be done without buy-in from the public. The public has to be part of that process, and I believe that through that process, through getting people involved and in getting them to participate in a vision for not only Channel Islands Harbor, but Fisherman's Wharf, we could bring it back to its old glory.
Thank you. Trevor Court.
So the first thing I'm going to do, picking back up where I left off, is I'm going to bring my communities together, our communities together. We have our communities, unfortunately, at war with each other right now because of this lawsuit that the mayor decided to file against all of us. It's really sad and it's unfortunate. And then the second thing I'm going to do, and you guys, when you drive over that river in 5 years, and if I'm on the Board of Supervisors, you're going to remember this meeting, because that river is going to look a heck of a lot different. We're going to rejuvenate that river, just like we did in Sacramento, where I grew up. The river used to look like the Ventura River does. And you know what the city did? They said, we had enough. They took it over, they rejuvenated it, and guess what happened? The economy followed. The economy was revitalized because they took care of a natural resource. People went there, they started having picnics, and guess what follows the people? Businesses. That's what I would do when I'm elected on the Board of Supervisors. And the reason I think I'm the best is because I'm not a career politician. I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm not beholden to anybody. You elect politicians to be truthful and transparent with you. You elect politicians to analyze the facts and to arrive at a decision. And I'm going to tell you exactly how I did that, because I don't have any aspirations. I'm not in this for my future to please one interest or the next. I don't care. I'm going to do what's in the best interest of the people. And that's why I think I'm the best candidate to be District 1 Supervisor.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson?
Hi, I want to get people to work, and I want to make sure that our county money is reinvested into this local economy. And I would do that by working with our local labor organizations that we create what are called project labor agreements, which is what happens when public money is spent, that we make sure that we work with our labor organizations to set safe working conditions and practices, that we set fair wages, that we set standards for quality and accountability, and that we prefer to hire local. That's going to reduce traffic, reduce emissions. It's also going to make sure that the money that these people earn is reinvested in our local community. They won't have to commute as far, again, reducing those emissions. And you know, when you care about this community, you can also be held accountable by this community. So if I'm part of the contractors working on the local fire station, I know that those are my firefighters in my community, and I know that they're my neighbors, and that if I do a good job, that I can be held accountable. They can come knocking on my door and tell me the toilet's not working or the walls are coming apart. So I want to be able to hold people accountable, give jobs to local people, reinvest that money in this community, and make sure that all county contracts are given in this way. Thank you.
Mr. Herrera.
Well, I just want to ask you folks, just look at my history. I started on the waterfront in the Port of Hueneme as a labor leader, working with all the emerging companies coming to the Port of Hueneme. I knew that I had to help them be successful for the port to be successful. After accomplishing that, I was elected as a harbor commissioner. As a harbor commissioner, I became very effective at working with our local, state, and federal government to provide benefits for the Port of Hueneme, which I represented. I have been able to get the port to grow by about 75 acres, and as we mentioned before, 15,000 jobs, direct and indirect, attributed to the Port of Hueneme, plus millions of tax dollars that come to this city and the county for very needed public services. We keep hearing about economic development. I urge you to look at my record. I have done economic development. I know what it takes. I've negotiated at the highest level with our government, with the Secretary of the Navy, to provide joint use agreement for the Port of Hueneme so that we could bring strategic and also economic benefit to both the military and the Port of Hueneme. We have done a lot of things. We have become the greenest port. It takes money to go green, I said before, and we did it. But we found the money and we turned green. Look at my record. Look at my record.
Thank you.
Look at my record.
Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you. There's so many complex issues that the county government deals with, and to pick one is a little bit unfair. But I will say the thing that I'm very concerned about is equitable services for the people of Greater Oxnard. That is in particular health care. I represent people who are trying to get access to the county health system, and it's very less services are available to the people of our community, particularly Spanish-speaking people, because of wrong choices or not good choices in hiring. I also think that many of our caregivers are not treated properly, and the county decides what they should get paid. As more and more people age and want to stay home, we need to take care of those people who are caring for them, their relatives who sometimes never get a break. I'm very familiar with those situations, and I think that's why I'm one of the best people to be a county supervisor. I am responsive. I can communicate with our community. I listen. I get back to them. I also think that workforce development, which is part of the county government, we need to take a look and transition to those new jobs and not be stuck in the past, the horse and buggy era. It is hard to change, but we've got to do it, so we don't want to be left behind.
Thank you. Now we'll go to closing statements, and each candidate will have 2 minutes. And we will start with, this time, with Mr. Flynn.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell people a little bit more about why I'm running for county supervisor. And I focused this evening on jobs and economic development, and in particular Channel Islands Harbor and Fisherman's Wharf, where the County Board of Supervisors has direct authority to make sure that this harbor is redeveloped in a responsible manner. But some of the other issues that are my top priorities were touched on here this evening, and the next is mental health. We have a mental health crisis here in the United States. A lot of homeless issues surround around people that are not being properly, are not getting help for their mental health illnesses. The county right now is front and center in providing mental health services to not just the homeless, but to those who cannot afford to see a doctor. So mental health is a way to also end the homeless crisis. Next, I believe that the Sheriff's Department, which has been very successful in Thousand Oaks and Newbury Park, with some pilot programs about youth intervention. I'd like to see those pilot programs not only brought to El Rio, which is in the unincorporated area in Nyland Acres, but also throughout the city of Oxnard and teaming up with the Oxnard Police Department. And finally, my goal is to give the voices of those who feel least heard, and those are the residents of Silver Strand Beach, Hollywood Beach, and El Rio and Nyland Acres. Those are in the unincorporated areas. I believe all three of those distinct and unique areas need better representation, and I'd like to bring the equivalent of a municipal advisory board or a neighborhood council to each and every one of those entities so that what we recently experienced over Fisherman's Wharf never happens again. My website is tim4supervisor.com, and that's a 4 meaning the number 4. And I'd appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Quirk.
So it's time to bring people together and not tear people down. This river issue is going to unite us, is not going to divide us. There's some quotes that I like, and it rings true to my heart, and that is that service to others is the secret sauce to a happy life. And I discovered that during the Thomas Fire, when I took 3 months off of work and I started a nonprofit in the upper Ojai area and started helping my neighbors. And these people, they came in and their homes were burned down. And I stayed behind in these roadblocks, and we created this movement of people. And we did something that has never been done anywhere at any time on earth. The BBC, that's this radio station, they were interviewing me in my living room, and they told me that. And we were able to help people just by thinking outside the box. Like, for example, if your home burned down, we take a picture of you, we put it on social media, and the supplies and relief supplies and money started coming in. And we raised nearly $500,000 for our neighbors, and it went straight to the people. And one of the co-founders of our nonprofit is sitting here in the audience tonight. And that movement of people was just created by this energy of this fire, just burnt all the barriers down. People didn't care if you were rich or poor, or Democrat or Republican, and that energy is still going if we just harness it right. And I think that if we do that, if we forget about all of our differences and think about what we have in common, that if you elect me as Board of Supervisor for District 1, I'm going to continue with that. And I truly believe that in my heart, because it is the secret sauce to happy life, and that's why I took so much time off of work. I encourage you to go look at my website, votetrevorquirk.com. My time's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you. So I have a lifetime of public service, and anyone who's worked with me knows that I am realistic and deliberate in my decision making, that I am also very collaborative. So I will take the time and do the work and do the research before making any decision, and as well bringing people to the table, as Trevor said, to work together on solutions. A lot of the problems that have happened in the county have been due to a lack of communication and a lack of collaboration. We saw that at Fisherman's Wharf. when the county wasted a lot of time and money doing this plan that was not going to pass in Oxnard. Had they brought Oxnard and the people and the city council together to have discussions beforehand, they could have saved a lot of money and a lot of time, and we could have had a resolution that could have passed. So I'd like to see us do the work up front, communicate, and work together. I also don't make promises I can't keep. I've worked in bureaucracy long enough to know that I'm not going to make you a promise and tell you I can solve this tomorrow. But what I can do is look at where we want to be and bring us step by step in that direction until we can get there. The last thing I want to say is that I cannot be bought. So whether you have been my PTSA president or you've been my friend, I will make the fairest decision I can for the greater good of all. We need a supervisor who's looking out for all people, not special interests. We need someone who cares about the environment and about the things we talked about with socioeconomic insecurities and inequities. That is not what we have right now. We have someone who has been bought by the oil industry to the tune of almost $1 million between her first campaign and the second campaign, and she votes that way. I encourage you to go to kellycheck.org to take a look at her voting record. Everything there is based on her voting record, and her voting record is there for you to look at yourself. And if you want to learn more about me, it's Stevenson4supervisor.com. Thank you very much. Please go to our websites and choose someone that's here for the people.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Herrera?
Thank you. In 1994, the voters of this district gave me a public trust and elected me to the Oxnard Harbor District as a port commissioner. I can look at you in the eye and tell you that I have been faithful to that trust. I have guided the port's growth and made it work for you, the community, and made it prosperous and profitable and created jobs. This is the type of leadership that I would bring to the county as your supervisor of the 5th District. We've talked a lot about a lot of issues here tonight, and actually what really matters is the economic vitality of this area, which there is none. And it has been ignored for many years. And some of the people sitting up here are responsible for that. You just can't say it happened overnight. All of these issues have been brewing for years, and we have never had the urgency to address them. And we need to have that urgency now. That's the only way you take care of these things, by addressing them and pushing them forward. So that's the reason I'm running for supervisor. I got very tired of trying to move initiatives forward that would bring our community up, that would create jobs, improve our economy, and help our working people here. I have done everything in my power at that particular level, and I hope that being at this other level will help me bring everyone together to do the things that I envision for this community, to have it be prosperous, to not have 29,000 people living in poverty, to have our kids getting equal education and health care. We can do it. It's impossible until we do it, but we can do it together.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez?
I thought I had answered this question, right?
No, this is your closing statement.
Oh, this is my closing statement.
2
Okay, great.
minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank INCO for providing this opportunity, and I think it's very important for you all to be informed voters, get the facts, and as I mentioned before, there's a push-pull which calls people and tells them lies about me and also about Kim. Be informed voters. These are complex issues. Do not just be complacent about it. Your future depends on it. During my decades of public service, which includes community volunteering, a community lawyer, and as a city council member, I've made some very difficult decisions. Not everybody was happy with me, not my friends sometimes, but I always acted to make our city safer and healthier and accountable to you. I will do that as your member of the Board of Supervisors. Our most vulnerable people must be protected. That is the county's responsibility. We all have something to do as volunteers in our community groups and our churches. County government must be responsive to the needs of better law enforcement, fire services. We need to get ready for more fires. The state auditor has found that our county is lacking in being prepared for disasters. I will work on that. We need clean air, clean water, better traffic control, better public transit, health services, and we need regional solutions. I have been participating in regional groups since I've been on council. I continue to do that to these days. Climate change is already affecting us. Our children, our young people are dismayed and despairing. I will make their concerns one of my first priorities. We need to deal with climate change. The health of the people and not special interests will always be my first priority. Please check out my website, carmenforsupervisor.com. Thank you.
Mr. Burham.
Well, first of all, let me thank INCO for holding this event, my fellow candidates, and the Latin Business Association for their statewide endorsement. We are tired of the dilly-dally, delay, and deny career politicians with their excuses and empty promises. Fisherman's Wharf is a good example. They have served for a decade, and we are paying the price. Pick an issue. They can't do it at the city. They're not going to be able to do it at the county. We need a community we can all be proud to call home. If you are as tired as I am of the usual promises and the same individuals switching seats without a thought to the future, we now have a choice. We can choose performance over the empty promises. We can choose someone who is independent, free from special interest, and who has served as chief financial officer over 40 years in government, business, and not-for-profits, literally being in charge of billions of dollars and serving hundreds of thousands of people. We can choose the only candidate that actually has the experience listed in the county job description, which is financial management and leadership, and that can get the job done right. Now, here's my card. Hopefully you have it. Remember my platform, because I will do it. Together, we will restore economic prosperity, public safety and infrastructure, and financial transparency for our community. Please vote by March 3rd. My credentials: U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, veteran, business owner, assistant professor, retired CPA. And finally, my website, www.burhamforsupervisor.com. Now, please feel free to ask me any questions you may have after the forum, and remember to vote for Jeffrey Burham. That's Jeffrey Burham, number 5 on the ballot.
Thank you.
Thanks, and God bless.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the candidates for attending the INCO forum. I believe this was the first time we've had a supervisors forum from the INCO. So I want to thank the candidates. The candidates can come down now. We're going to do a little quick transition here, and we're going to move to the next subject, which is Measure B. And Alex Nguyen, the city manager, is going to give a presentation on that, and there'll be question and answers on Measure B.
Good luck.
You too, Trevor.
Nice to talk to you.
All right. It's still a little cold up here.
There's a draft and everything.
Let's all be seated now for the second part. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I noticed Carmen's was kind of low, wasn't it, when she was talking?
Testing, yes. Can we all be seated so we can get started? Can't hear me?
Let's take our seats, folks. We're going to get started. This one's a little bit higher.
Down?
Yeah, use the gap.
Oh. Can we all be seated? If you're not going to be seated, please leave the chambers. Please leave the chambers if you're not going to be seated. Okay, now we're still in new business, subject 2, and it'll be a presentation by our city manager, Alex Nguyen, on Measure B. Quiet in the chambers. Quiet. Can we close the door? Thank you. Okay, city manager?
Oh, are we going to explain?
Oh, I'm sorry. The process, yes. You go ahead, Gabe, explain the...
Thank you, Jack. And this second item here is information on Measure B, Oxnard Government Accountability and Ethics Act. And this structure for this portion will be different than we had for the candidates portion. This will work much like we would use for an INCO meeting or for a regular city council meeting or a meeting where we would have the presentation from the city manager. And then after that, we have the cards up there where Adam is sitting. Please put your name on there that you would like to speak in regards to Measure B. And then each speaker will be called up by our chair. And then you can go to the microphone over here to your left on the room. And you'll have 2 minutes to ask questions or make statements in regards to the item. And then after your question portion is done, the city manager will respond. And we'll do that for each speaker. And you have 2 minutes, correct?
Right.
2 minutes per speaker.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead. City manager?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the INCO board for providing this time for me to explain what Measure B is, the Oxnard Government Accountability and Ethics Act. Okay, I will talk louder, Pat, thank you. So I'm going to go through and provide information about what Measure B is and what it isn't, but I'm also going to give you a little insight from the city manager's profession about why this measure is so important. Now, so this is what it is that is showing up, will be showing up on the ballot if you have your vote by mail information already. You've seen this language. So I'm not going to read the text there because I'm going to go over the details, the 4 points of it. But I want to provide a little background about why this is so needed for a city like Oxnard. When I was applying for this job over 18 months ago, I of course did the research that any person applying to be city manager would do. And the good news is there was a lot of information available. The bad news is a lot of it was bad. And I have a compilation here, and it's a couple reams of paper of investigations and audit findings. And these were conducted starting in 2010 and the ensuing 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But it's important to remind everyone that all of the problems laid out in here, some of which we are looking to address with Measure B, these problems didn't materialize at the time of these investigations and assessments. What the information in here in plain and clear black and white was going on for years, years and years. There are legacy problems, organizational cultural problems, ethical problems, leadership problems, management problems. So part of the process that the city's been undergoing since then has been year after year to struggle to make improvements. So this represents one more step towards making improvements and fixing many of these legacy problems. So the essence of Measure B, if the voters consider and approve it, it would amend the city code to require 4 things. Number 1 is to prohibit elected city officials and planning commissioners from accepting gifts from lobbyists or contractors or developers. It would impose contribution limits on candidates running for elected office, mayor, city council, city clerk, or city treasurer. It would require the city to post specific city contracts and financial reports on the city's website, and it will update term limits for city council and mayor, and of course part of that would be to change the mayor's term from 2 to 4 years. So on the first point, prohibiting elected officials and planning commissioners from accepting gifts from lobbyists or contractors. It makes our ethical standards in this city clear for all people doing or wishing to do business in our city. It prevents the situation where anyone's beholden to someone else just because they gave them gifts or big donations. And it specifically prevents people seeking contracts or gaining favors through gifts. So I want to read a couple of things from the district attorney's investigation that is on point here. Close relationships existed between several city officials and private individuals conducting multi-million-dollar transactions with the city. There were several instances of international travel by officials aboard one company's private aircraft. Companies affiliated with the private individuals made significant profits from transactions with the city. Now, to be fair, however, there was no evidence that the officials had any direct financial interest in the questioned transaction. The evidence does not establish criminal conflicts of interest related to the multi-million-dollar transactions examined. So, of course, what that means is while there were these relationships, there was no individual, direct, personal financial gain. However, the investigation goes on to say that it became obvious through this investigation that accepting gifts from companies doing business with the city was fairly common among some city officials. So what kinds of gifts are we wanting to preclude here and prevent? Well, lots of golf, apparently, lots of fancy meals, private flights to Cabo, private flights to Napa, more fancy meals, Los Angeles Lakers games, including a limo drive, more meals, more golf, Dodgers games, Broadway shows, another Dodgers game. Now, in one instance, they found that, by the way, the good news is none of these elected officials or top city officials are any longer with us here in City Hall. In another section, they described that on the day after a council member returned from one of these trips to Mexico, that council member voted to approve the city's multi-million-dollar purchase of the Sturgis Road building from Foxborough Park Incorporated, a Huberman-affiliated company. That's why this matters to the city manager profession. It's important that it's difficult enough to do my job in the fairest and most transparent way possible, but if people are allowed to give these kinds of gifts, there's not a whole lot I can do. when this stuff is happening behind my back and around me. So this is very important to the city management profession. Next one, in terms of what it doesn't do, so this aspect of Measure B does not impact any resident's ability to communicate with your elected officials, right? So you're continue to be free to contact your officials and your representatives and to give them all your opinions. Basically, what this means is you can't take them to a Broadway show, as much as anybody might think that that's okay. Secondly, it imposes contribution limits to candidates running for elected office. Again, mayor, city council, city clerk, or city treasurer. It will, for the first time in Oxnard, have contribution limits. The limits help to remove the risk and certainly the perception that elected officials are beholden to their contributors or donors. Now, according to the state of California, recently they published information citing that in cities without campaign contribution limits, candidates sometimes raise more than 40% of their total campaign funds from a single contributor. So think about that. That happens across the state. In recent years, there have been actual examples of 50,000, 100,000, and even a case of a 244,000 contribution from candidates for local office from donors with business before that local government. Such massive campaign contributions create a serious risk of actual or perceived corruption. Now, that's based out of language in the state legislature's AB 571 legislation. Now, what the contribution limits don't do is they don't restrict anyone's First Amendment rights. We just are looking to set contribution limits. You can still make contributions to the candidates of your choice for the people that you believe in. And this is only about contribution limits. Everyone is still allowed to have independent expenditures for political communications, whether by individuals, corporations, nonprofit corporations, labor unions, and other associations, as well as loans to yourself if you are a candidate. Third aspect of Measure B is to require posting of specific city contracts and financial reports on the website. The city is working to correct past problems with new financial reporting. The city's new interactive website will go beyond state financial reporting requirements and provide additional transparency to residents. And Measure B, importantly to me, locks in this requirement. Again, I refer back to these investigations and these audit findings. I mean, the city, the first major audit that revealed over 100 findings about our various financial management issues. So again, these are legacy problems that were here for a long time. They permeate into the organizational culture, and it takes time to fix these things. In this instance, the administrative policies were clearly not enough. So this is why, again, it's important that if the voters vote this in, it cannot be undone by the next city manager or the next city council majority. This aspect of Measure B provides the opportunity for Oxnard voters to lock this requirement in. Now, yes, this is a best practice for a high-functioning city, but again, all the problems are spelled out very clear here. This city had problems complying with those kinds of policies. So what it doesn't do is it doesn't limit any additional financial reporting by the city. It actually complements state law requirements as well as our recently passed Sunshine Ordinance. It requires posting of contracts to city council as well as our labor contracts. And the final item is it sets the council member and the mayor's term limits to a 3-term limit versus a current 2-term limit. And it also allows people to run for council, gain experience, and then run for mayor. So what the 3-term limit doesn't do is it doesn't protect incumbents. I mean, my God, it's term limits. Again, even with Measure B, whether the voters pass this or not, ultimately it's up to the voters to decide if you want to limit your elected officials to 2 or 3 terms in office by voting. And by the way, not every elected person even survives 1 term in office, right? There are often times when the voters will vote that person out. Now, let me summarize. So it doesn't give, so Measure B actually doesn't give the city any additional powers. It just gives voters the option of expanding our ethics protections, transparency, and fiscal accountability. Increases the transparency by requiring additional opportunities for the public to monitor and review government spending and decision-making. Measure B updates term limits to 3 4-year terms. Measure B also prohibits council members and commissioners from accepting gifts from lobbyists or city contractors, preventing special interest influence in city decision-making. And Measure B imposes campaign contribution limits for elected officials for the first time in the city of Oxnard. Now, I want to give an example of campaign contribution limits and give an example right here in Oxnard. So this is from one of our candidates over the last several years, and you can see there's a lot of money coming in, not only from outside of Oxnard, but there's some interesting amounts. So I'm going to start in the country. I mean, you're looking at, let me see here, over $1,000 from Louisiana, over $8,000 from Austin. Given our current times, I'd like to highlight only $200, but from Kansas City in Missouri. And then in California, let me get this again. You're looking at $12,000 from Woodland, and another $6,500 from Woodland, $1,000 from Brisbane, $1,000 from Camarillo, another $1,000 from Ojai, $5,000 from Woodland Hills, $9,900 and another $5,000 from Corona, $2,500 from Orange, let me see, $1,000 from Malibu, $2,500 from LA, another $1,500 from LA, I guess another $1,000 from Simi Valley. So this is a lot of campaign contributions, not from Oxnard, used in efforts to influence City Hall. These things, I believe, matter. So if you think about that particular example where the campaign donations were nearly, and this is over the last several years, nearly $120,000, 32% of that were donations higher than $750, which represents over $100,000 of those contributions. And 68% were under the $750 amount, but that only represents just under $16,000. So that, and by the way, this is on top of this particular candidate loaning himself over $300,000. But that's a lot of money. And again, large amounts, but also from outside of Oxnard being spent to influence our City Hall. And that's why, again, from speaking as a city manager and speaking on behalf of the profession, it makes it very hard for city managers when you have this amount of money trying to influence City Hall.
Yeah.
And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We have cards if you want to make a comment or questions, and if you just, I'll take them in the order that we received them. And the first one is Daniel Chavez. We're giving everyone 2 minutes. And then the next one will be Gabe Turan. Remember, you'll have 2 minutes to make a question or comment.
Check.
Yeah, is it working?
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, chairs and residents and staff. My name is Daniel Chavez Jr., lifelong resident of the city of Oxnard. A couple of comments on Measure B. And prior to the presentation, a flyer of what's wrong with Measure B was passed around. And it brings up 4 points, just like the presentation did. But the two that stood out to me is city claim number 2, where it says Measure B will eliminate special interest influence by strengthening campaign finance reforms and limiting political contributions. One of the bullet points say that it's unconstitutional to limit somebody's contributions to any particular candidate. Now, the problem that I have with this was back in 2016, I thought it was wrong for a local race in the 19th largest city in California to be having candidates spend upwards of $80,000. Ridiculous for a local race. I can see that on the state, I can see that on the federal, but for a local city council race was a little bit outrageous. Claim number 4, Measure B will establish term limits for the mayor and members of the city council. Well, one of the problems that it says that it weakens term limits. Many of our elected officials, from our state legislator to our governor to county supervisors, have a total of 12 years to serve. Now, of course, I would prefer Measure B to be worked a little bit different, that if you had a combination of either council and mayor, that would be your 12 years and you have to sit out a term, as opposed to saying if you do it all 12 years in the mayor, 12 years in the city council. But the competing thing that it says that there's already real term limits.
Thank
Can
you.
I just finish that comment?
Just end it real quick.
Yeah, I'll finish it. Sorry. I'm a little rusty. Haven't done this in 2 minutes before.
Go ahead, finish it.
But it says that there's already real term limits in place. Unfortunately, there is not real term limits in place. It is the exact same thing of just weakening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gabe Turan?
Were we going to give the city manager a chance to respond to? Were there
Do you want to
questions
respond to
respond
that?
to, or was it mostly comments?
I think that was a comment.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Gabe.
Thank you. I've actually looked into Measure B as well as the other initiatives that we would might have seen in the November election. Looks like one of them will be there for the time being. In regards to the term limits portion, in a video I had created for Oxnard voters to look at and get some information about these measures, I'm currently creating one for Measure B as well. And in my research, I couldn't find any examples of one of the arguments against the term limits part about seat swapping, where there's an argument that a council member or 2 council members who are going to term out at the same time could just run for each other's seats and swap seats and then the clock starts over. Well, we have district elections in the city of Oxnard. That's mathematically impossible. How would that ever happen unless they moved the other person's district? If the case of the mayor and a city council member were terming out at the same time, which, by the way, wouldn't even happen this decade if this were to go into place, that's also the mayor would now need to live in that district in order to run for that council member seat. And in the current system we have now, even without term limits, even with 2 terms or even 3 terms, a council member could run for mayor anytime they want when that seat comes up. I mean, I don't understand how that changes much of anything. So looking at this, so 3 terms makes a lot more sense. In one of the videos I created, I made the analogy of thinking of a position at your work that has high turnover and just how much effort and resources go into training that person again and again when they're replaced. And so after 2 terms, if a person's reelected, I mean, we're getting rid of them almost at the prime of their ability to serve. If they were reelected for a 2nd term, if they can come back for a 3rd term, they can do a little bit more good before they term out again. Lastly, for the the contribution limits, I'll say it very quickly that for many people in this city, there's a lot of people saying we have so many incumbents, we need to get new people in. How could we afford to do it if we have to run against people who have deep pockets and lots of connections? Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Purcell, followed by Aaron Starr.
So Measure B is an incumbent protection scheme in several ways, more ways than I can cover in the time I'm given. So I want to urge you to hear the opposing side. There's a website you can visit, noonoxnardmeasureb.com for more details. Much of it is just kind of creating the illusion of reform without real substance under it. Just restating what the existing law is and putting it into Oxnard Municipal Code does not, increase transparency. A large portion of it is blatantly unconstitutional. It violates at least 3 existing U.S. Supreme Court rulings, and the courts are not going to look kindly on that. I do have a question for the city manager. I did a Public Records Act request for how much has been spent on this, all right? So 2 no-bid contracts were approved for $177,000 to hire a company to do a survey of public opinions and find out what pretty buzzwords the public would like to hear, and then a marketing firm to write language to help sell Measure B. Voters in this room have probably received already 2 glossy mailers mailed at taxpayer expense to campaign for Measure B. I don't yet know the cost of these. So my question for the city manager is, how much taxpayer money do you intend to spend on your campaign for this measure?
So, number one, I intend to spend as little as necessary. I believe that when you look at, again, all the problems this city has, the legacy problems, it is important that we invest in correcting these problems. So it makes no sense for me when people continually talk about how problematic the city is and yet continually to fight efforts to correct it. It makes no sense. So this is worthwhile. The contracts that Ms. Purcell is alluding to, they were under my authority to do, and under my authority to sole source. We have rules for that. I follow those rules. I'm sorry that you don't like that our informational mailers are glossy. I've never seen a rule that said government information had to be matte or dull. Thank you.
Aaron Starr, followed by Audrey Keller.
We used to have more transparency in this city before you urged the city council to adopt a different purchasing ordinance. Before, every contract that was over $25,000 went to the city council for approval. Now it's over $200,000, and anything under it basically is under the city manager's control. So that's the type of transparency this city manager urges today. Once again, if you want to hear more about the other side, go to no on oxnardmeasureb.com. It's not possible to give the full rebuttal here in 2 minutes. I would also urge you to go to a League of Women's Voters Forum on February 12th at Oxnard College at the Performing Arts Center. There will actually be an opportunity for us to debate each other, which is something that I don't believe that the city manager has been exactly encouraging through this process of providing his information. So for a real opportunity to hear the other side, once again, go to noonoxnardmeasureb.com, and please attend the forum hosted by the League of Women Voters, who will actually put forward an even presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Audrey Keller.
Can I respond, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I'm certainly looking forward to an open debate. I did not organize this forum, so I'm not sure what you're trying to insinuate there. Now, with the purchasing ordinance, so either Mr. Starr doesn't have his information correct or he's willingly trying to mislead the public. The change in the contract limits took place, were worked on, and were implemented before I was here. So if you think that I was telepathically trying to convince the council to do that before I applied for this job, perhaps. Transparency? No, actually, there's a lot more transparency now. We passed a sunshine ordinance. It makes a major difference for this community. Before I got here, all materials for city council meetings were published only 72 hours before the council meeting, following state law. We passed a sunshine ordinance. Everything is now published 12 whole days before a council meeting. 12 whole days. Last night's council meeting, the binder was actually about this thick. How many of you want to review this over the weekend to find out what's happening? You now have 12 days to review all the materials. And even though I have the authority to sign contracts up to the $200,000 limit, I also have a practice of publishing all those contracts once a year on a city council agenda so that the council and the public can review every single contract that I signed for. That's not required anywhere. I've made that my practice since I got here. Thank you.
Thank you. Audrey Keller, followed by Aaron Greer.
I really liked the presentation, and I had a question regarding the map, and it's a fascinating map of donation statistics. Is that a current sitting council member? Can you disclose that?
No, it's not. It's someone who's been active, and all of the campaign disclosures are actually online. And they're at the city clerk's website, and it's those are state requirements. They've been around for a while. I think most people are simply not aware of it, even though you have the public disclosures. But I think people can be quite enlightened if they review it.
Well, it was very enlightening to me. This is a neighborhood council meeting after all. And my neighborhood is impacted by the Energy Commission in a big way. We have a power plant. And I don't like to see, well, I'm fascinated to see that the donations are coming from Texas, which happens to be where the headquarters of NRG and CenterPoint Energy are both headquartered. So I thought that was quite fascinating, and I thank you for publishing that and mapping it, most importantly. It's kind of easy to see. Show me the money. You showed us the money. Thank you. And separately, showing us the money, I love it that you're going to be publishing the financials on the city website. I think that has a lot to do with the city council approving the new financial system to make it hopefully easier for the accounting to be published and clear. And I'm sure there will be some clarifications required as it begins to be published, but I appreciate that very much. I think financial transparency is the first thing, and it is the best management practice that you're bringing to the city. Thank you very much.
Aaron Greer, followed by Pat Brown.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I've been on this side of the dais. Glad to see you guys all here. Great forum tonight. Thank you very much for putting that together. You kind of stole my question, Audrey, but I was going to ask you, Mr. City Manager, are you at liberty to name the individual who you showed up there that had all the outside from other states, outside money?
Can you wait? Can you let him finish his 2 minutes and then you can answer? I'm sorry.
Okay, well, you can answer that. I think I already know the answer to that, but Audrey kind of touched on that. The other thing is, everybody here in attendance, before you came to the meeting tonight to learn about Measure B, how many of you read this little pamphlet you get from the county voter, the flimsy newsprint, not the pretty glossy one that we heard about earlier, but this one that had the 5-page text in it of the whole measure? How many people actually read that before you came to the meeting and had legitimate, logical questions to ask? Okay, a couple of you. That's good. For those out there in TV land, I highly recommend you take a read of this and derive all your questions from this, because there's a lot of misinformation out there from the usual sources. Some of it may be legitimate, a lot of it's probably not. But this little map up here really concerns me. Now, I'm flattered that there's people all over the frickin' country that think that highly of Oxnard, that they're going to put that kind of money into our campaign, but at the same time, that's pretty damn scary. We really need to fix that. Thank you.
Did you want to answer that question? No? Okay. Pat Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of statements. This map, obviously what's happening is that people are buying their way with our people who are in office. And this is and they don't live here. And this is very, very, very bad. It means that basically they're figuring out a way to take over Oxnard and get what they want out of us. That's what it means to me. And I think this is wrong. I've noticed in politics, I was born and raised in politics, okay? And my mother ran for office in the Northwest 5 times and was reelected 5 times. And I've seen a lot of strange things going on over all my years, and living in the San Fernando Valley, involved with Los Angeles. We don't want anybody to have their position bought by somebody else, because that person who buys it is going to control that person's opinions and how they relate to the situations at hand. This is just very, very wrong. That actually makes it, to me, as if it's not fair. I want fair. I want everybody who runs to have equal opportunity to get the position, not because of money that's been given to them for advertising, but for what they themselves can do on their own without somebody's big money helping them get through it. So if,
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
I just thought you ought to know. Thank you.
Are you, just put it in a card after you're done. You have 2 minutes. Mr.
Carlos Quiroz, Redwood. I've noticed that nobody has stated their neighborhood.
No,
Now,
well, go ahead.
one of the questions that I want to ask you guys, members on the board, when did we change the structure of doing cards instead of just coming over here and asking questions?
We can't answer that. We
No,
can't answer you.
Okay, well, could you refer me to somebody
Yes.
later on?
Yes.
Okay.
We can talk to you later.
Okay, one of the questions to you, Mr. City Manager, I've got this sheet in here stating that the limits that on Measure B do not apply to the city manager or staff. Is that right?
Because we're not elected officials, we're professional staff.
So shouldn't it be everybody on this included?
No, I mean, if you're thinking about including staff, does that include, besides the city manager, does that include the people that work at the environmental resources, the garbage staff? No, I'm an at-will employee. The city council can fire me without cause at any moment.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen, for your presentation on Measure B.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Now we'll go to neighborhood chair reports.
Good evening again. Aaron Greer, Windsor North. Just a quick update. We held our annual elections, e-board officers. I'm on the hook for another term. Our vice chair is Mr. Andres Sanchez. Our member at large is Bruce Ritchie, and our treasurer is Bill Kraus. Our secretary position is vacant, so if anybody out there listening in Windsor North is interested, please contact me. Come to the next meeting. One other item of interest, we did vote to purchase a gift card to Mr. Marvin Booth. Many of you have seen him on Nextdoor.com out doing a lot of cleanup work. I did an event with him and Jack down at the Performing Arts Center about a month ago, had a great time. We donated $50 to him. We don't have a big budget, but we're happy to see that money go to help him out with the supplies and the personal costs that he's incurring. If any of you are interested in helping out with that, I highly encourage you to check on Nextdoor.com and see if you can find out where he's going to be working next. This guy's done fantastic work, really an inspiration. So all of you out there listening in TV land, please say thank you to him if you see him out there and help him out in any way you can. Thanks.
Len Schulman, I'm chairman of the Carriage Square Neighborhood Council. We're having our first meeting of the year tomorrow, Thursday, at Kern School at 7 p.m. Topic of conversation, and in fact, what our meeting is all about, is the serious problem of homelessness in Oxnard. And we have the Oxnard Housing Director, Emilio Ramirez, as our guest speaker to speak on it. Also, I just have a quick question on tonight's agenda. I noticed at the bottom here, it says that the next meeting is March the 11th. Should it not be the 4th?
Yeah. Yes, you're right.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Hinkin with the East Village Neighborhood Council. On January 25th, we had a board meeting and we discussed our neighborhood meeting, which will be scheduled for May 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Rio Rosales School Cafeteria on Kohala Street. Our neighborhood cleanup is scheduled for September 19th, and a District 3 meeting with developers of Camino del Sol High School is being developed now. We don't have a schedule yet, but that involves East and West Village, Rose Park, Rio Lindo, and La Colonia. The groundbreaking for the new Camino High School will be on 12 February 2020 at 2 p.m. at the campus site. Access to the event will be at the Gibraltar Gate at the end of Milagro Street next to East Village Park. Thank you.
Audrey Keller, Channel Islands Neighborhood Council. January 23rd, we held our neighborhood council meeting where the city manager presented his staff and his presentation, which was fantastic. We had about 100 in the audience. We also presented a full tour most of the day to Senator Feinstein's staff member. We toured the harbor. We showed her the pollution coming in from the farmlands in the Edison Canal. She was quite impressed. We sent her a lot of photos and sent her back with a lot of requests. Also in January, Channel Islands Neighborhood Council applied to the UC Santa Barbara system, the Bren School, for internships. And we hope that we win an internship and have students in environmental studies study the harbor degradation and study what solutions can be provided to. And we did that independent of city staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with a neighborhood report? Diana.
Diana Valsey, Orchard Park Neighborhood Council. Our next neighborhood meeting is Thursday, February 27th.
What? Diane, we can't hear you.
Thursday, February 27th at 6:30 p.m. Our meeting will be held at the Camino Gonzalez Paseo de Luz Apartments on Gonzalez Road. Our spring cleanup is March 14th, 2020, and that's all I have.
Gabe?
Thank you. Just very quickly, the next Fremont South Neighborhood Council meeting will be February 20th at the Downtown Oxnard Library in Meeting Room B, and we will have the city manager, Alex Nguyen, to be presenting on these current initiatives that are happening in the city and doing the presentations he's been doing for other councils. Thank you.
Anybody else with the neighborhood chair report? Okay, executive board reports? Go ahead, Gabe.
Thank you. I'm disappointed that Mr. Starr left because he had made a statement that I wanted to include in my e-board report just to educate him a little bit. He had stated that the INCO is an agency of the city, which it is not. I can see the lack of knowledge in this, seeing as how, as far as I can tell, he's never been to an INCO meeting, even though he's ran for office numerous times. We actually serve the residents, not the city. We act as a conduit for resident voices and concerns. We're inclusive of the city in these efforts, but we do not work for the city. So I would just wanted to make that clarifying statement. I'm upset that, or I'm disappointed he left, but hopefully he'll rewatch this later and be able to see this comment, and I'll reach out to him later because I'm pretty easygoing, but I hope that an uninformed statement like that wouldn't offend or upset the other few dozen neighborhood council chairs throughout the city, implying that we all work for the city when in fact we work for the residents. I invite him to attend my neighborhood council meeting we have up on February 20th so that he can see how true community level engagement works. And that's my e-board statement.
Dan? Michael, if you can hear me, do you have anything to say? I have something real brief. I went to the Cal Giesler Neighborhood Council and attended the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council, and I missed the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council. I was planning to go, but I'm sorry to the neighborhood. Audrey, I couldn't make it. I had an emergency, but I look forward to going to the other neighborhoods and attending them. The executive board is going to try to get started some of these neighborhoods that are inactive. And if you remember 3 years ago when I was chair, I went actively to all the neighborhoods to get them started. And we look to do that again. And if you need help as far as increasing your attendance, let us know. We're here to help you. If you know of anybody who wants to start a neighborhood council that you know that's not active, let us know. So we look for more active neighborhoods to be involved with the city, and I believe it's very important for this organization to get as much participation as possible, and our voice becomes louder when we do have that. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Also, on the first Friday of February, I will be meeting with the city, or the Oxnard PTA Council, and I will be sitting with them to get connected as far as the neighborhoods and getting the PTA and the neighborhood council involved with the neighborhoods. To not only to share issues, but to increase our attendance and get the word out. There are most of the neighborhoods are within the Oxnard School District, and there's Hueneme and there's Rio School District, and I look to connect with them also to get some connection with the PTA in the schools. There's a lot of issues that we have that are similar as far as safety and streets and crosswalks and crime and so on, parks. So I believe we should connect with them, and if anybody's neighborhood that's within the Oxnard School District, I will be meeting with them on the last Monday of February. I don't know what date that is. I think that is the 23rd. Well, it's the last Monday. It's the 23rd or 24th at 5 o'clock at the Oxnard School District. And so if you want to come, you're more than welcome. And I also look forward to meeting with the PTA in Hueneme and Rio School District. That's all I have. Yes, and I want to thank the Spanish interpreters we have. They were volunteers, so I want to thank them as well. We don't. Thank you. And so now we'll go to future agenda items. Does anybody have any suggestion for future agenda items?
Carlos Quiroz, Redwood. We had a discussion last month on the changing from our meetings. Is there any way we could have a vote on our next meeting, changing it from 7 to 6 o'clock?
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll bring that up. Anybody else? Any future agenda items that people are interested in? No?
I've got one.
Oh, yes.
If we're going to provide input to the city on the budget.
Oh, yes. Yes. Also, the city is going to have a presentation for the new homeless shelter. They plan for 2nd Street. They're going to have a town hall and discuss that. And I hope this body, whatever decision they make, we have an influence on that plan. So I would like to see that on the agenda. Go ahead, Nancy. Is there anything?
Jack, I came to the last board meeting and you were not there, and I was informed that you changed the date on it because I wanted to bring it up about changing the hours of the meeting. If you change it to 6, you're going to lose a lot of people, and I'm going to be one of them because I don't get off from work until 6:45 in order to be here by 7. And there's a lot of information out there that people want to share like we've been doing. And if you change the meeting, you're going to lose a lot of us. And that was one of the things I was going to bring up to the board meeting.
Okay.
So you might consider keeping it at 7.
Thank you.
It appears that the Arts Council is, I was here at 4:30 for their meeting. And then I had to race home and have dinner and then be back here at 7. I think their meeting is generally going to go from 4:30 to 6. So, so we may be having to change people in and out if on the same day each month. We may have to be changing people in and out all the time, and I don't know if we want to do that. Plus, if we're going to do this at 6, then that means then I'm not going to get any dinner.
Pat, we're not going to have a discussion. We can't have a discussion.
I mean, it's bad enough as it is.
Just make
I have to do
it's just future agenda items.
Frozen food thing in 4 minutes kind of thing in order to eat. So, and I'm not the only one. I know that there's other people that just barely get here by 7.
You're out of order, Pat. We're talking about future agenda items. And so if there's
I thought you meant about time.
No,
he was talking about, they were talking about
if
time.
you have an item that you want to
changing
bring
it
to the INCO,
to 6 o'clock.
just give us a suggestion.
It's just not going to work. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? All right. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.